Hello, everyone. Thought I'd just get this on. We have everyone in the field on listen only. Excuse me. And we do ask that you hold all questions until the end. This shouldn't take more than about 25 to 30 minutes. We'll go over the professional standards and some stuff about that and the training and the requirements and what we're expected to look at when we come out to do a review as far as the professional standards requirement is. So it is now 1:30. So we are going to actually officially go ahead and start this webinar. So this webinar is going to be on professional standards and the requirements that USDA has for training, tracking, and what is allowable as professional standards training. Just a moment, please. Oh, there we go. Okay. So USDA has established minimum professional standards requirements for school nutrition, operating the school nutrition breakfast program. The effective date is July of 2015, so we're in our fourth year of this requirement. Professional standards for school nutrition professionals is a key provision of the Healthy Hunger. Just a minute, I got to see this. Is a key provision of the Healthy Hunger Kids Act of 2010. It requires a minimum amount of annual training hours for all school nutrition program directors, managers, and staff. The required training topics areas will vary according to the position and job requirements. There's also minimum hiring standards for new school nutrition program directors. So typically, people that have been in this job and in the field for a couple of years since this came on, they're all set as far as the minimum hiring standards. If someone goes from a smaller district to a much larger district above the threshold, they would have to meet those new hiring standards for that bigger capacity position. Having a little bit of a problem here. I might have to get a list in here to help me. There we go. People ask, well, are professionals really? Are we professionals? Of course we're professionals. What do? You have to figure out a budget. You know about finances. You have to be able to plan a menu that meets the school nutrition program requirements for whole grain, require for meat alternate, how to prove and how to verify that. You have to deal with people working together that, well, not all the time they may not get along. So you need to be able to work with those people. So you are professionals out there doing this job. Will always be a professional. A professional is a member of a profession or any person who earns their living from a specified activity. The term also describes the standards of education, so we have that. We have the standards of education for the director position. Standards of education training that prepare members of the professional with their particular knowledge and skills necessary to perform the role of that profession. In addition, some professions are subject to strict codes of conduct, enshrining rigorous ethical and moral obligations. And that's definitely part of us because we cannot talk to anyone outside of school nutrition and even inside of school nutrition who don't need the information. The information on a student's eligibility cannot be shared. There are ethical and moral obligations to this program. Also, students with special needs, students with special dietary needs and restrictions. Once again, things that can't be shared, but things that we have to strive to meet. Professional standards of practice and ethics for a particular field are typically agreed upon and maintained through widely recognized professional associations. Maine School Nutrition Association, the National School Nutrition Association. All people that help us to meet the standards that have to be met. So, yes, you are a professional in what you do. particular standards and requirements that you have to follow, and you do follow those. All right, let's get a little bit deeper here. Create minimum hiring standards for new school food authority directors based on a school district size. Now, Maine being a small state, we don't have that many, what would be considered a large district. We don't have any that are at the top of the scale. Sorry for those things that you see popping up. I don't know how to stop them, so they will pop up. There are hiring standards. There's higher standards for teachers, for transportation, for administration. So we are no different now. The USDA has set up these professional hiring standards and requirements. Okay, we've really got kind of 4 sizes, but we really only talk about 3. The one that Maine doesn't have any of is 10,000 or more student enrollment. Our largest districts fall within the 2,500 to 9,999, and we have 13 of that size districts. The rest of them are under the 2,400 or less student enrollment. So we have very few. We have none of the large. Current directors meeting these requirements are, I say, grandmothered, because most of the women working in school nutrition are women. So I don't really feel it's right to say grandfathered. So most people that have had this job for a while are grandmothered. If you're new, then you do have to meet the hiring standards and meet those requirements, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. Maine food service professionals. Now, I looked up on the MEDMS webpage the description of the people that are working. So according to MEDMS, these are the various different jobs, titles that we have in MEDMS for Maine school food service people. There's a director, supervisor, food service 1. We have 109 of those. And then food service director 2, we have 16. The differences in these is the number of students in the district. There's also a food service manager 1. We have 314 of those. And a food service manager 2. Food service manager is the person in charge of one district with one building. So that person in that kitchen has one building. They order the food for, they maintain the menus. They may not do the applications. They may. It could go either way. Then we have 1,400 food service staff, and we have 22 director of supervisor assistant to food service. When this stuff is being put into MEDMS, be careful what you say, because many of the names with the description are incorrect. There are directors listed that are actually food service. There are people listed as food service staff that are actually directors. So be careful. Whoever puts this information into the MEDMS system has to read the job description so it's done correctly. There are quite a few of them that are incorrect. Director 1, 2 or more kitchens, enrollment greater than 2,500. Director 2, 2 or more kitchens, enrollment is less than 2,500. Manager 1 is the manager of a kitchen that has a boss, that has a director over the program. A manager 2 is a single unit district manager. I might have had these backwards before, but these are actually the job descriptions and what they do in the MEDMS system. So next time, next fall, make sure that the correct data is entered. Excuse me. Okay. As most of you already know, food service director hiring standards. Maine is in this first class here for only a few districts. Mid-size LEAs, 2,500 to 10,000 students. To get that job, what's required? A bachelor's degree with a specific major, or a bachelor's degree with an academic major and a state-recognized certificate. Understanding this is what is part of the national requirement. Maine does not have a specific state-recognized certificate for a food service director or manager. Another option is a bachelor's degree with an academic major and at least 2 years of experience, or an associate's degree with a specific major in school nutrition or nutrition and at least 2 years of experience. So anyone coming in off of the field to this district size needs to meet these hiring standards. This is what Maine has a lot of, small districts, less than 2,500 students. Once again, very similar. The thing is, this has to have more years of experience. Bachelor's degree with a specific major, or bachelor's degree with an academic major, or associate's degree, specific major, 1 year of experience, high school diploma or a GED with 3 years of experience. Districts smaller than 500, the law provides state discretion on education requirements. Districts need to contact the state agency for approval when hiring a director in a district that has fewer than 500 students. New directors, SFA directors, and all LEAs, no matter what, if you're a new director, you must have at least 8 hours of food safety training within 5 years prior to your starting date, or completed within 30 days of the starting date. ServSafe can meet this. The 8 hours is going to depend on where the class is taken. My ServSafe classes typically are for 5 hours. So if you took my class to meet this requirement, you would still need 3 more hours, which is very easily attainable programs on the web. All right, now the fun part. Position required hours. If you are a director, you are required to have 12 hours yearly within specific fields for all of these that we'll talk about in a few more minutes. And this is from July 1 to June 30th. These hours do not roll. So if you get 15 hours in 1 year, the 3 hours that are excess, they don't carry. Maine requires that these hours that we're talking about are within the school year calendar, July 1 to June 30th. A manager, whatever manager, 10 hours. Staff over 20 hours weekly, 6 hours. All other part-time staff, less than 20 hours, 4 hours yearly. Any staff that is hired after January 1st of the school year, they are only required to meet half of the required training hours. All of this must be tracked and documentation to show that the training hours were met and attended to. If you have volunteer staff, I've been in a couple of schools that have volunteer staff. It's not a regular position. The district will have a volunteer substitute training program. So even if you have volunteer staff or substitutes, they still need to be trained on the specific job that they're doing. You can't just bring them in and say, go do that. They need to be trained because of the overreaching programs of this program. They have to be trained in their specific responsibility. What's a director? What's a manager? The person doing the duties, not the title. Now on our webpage, we have samples of what a manager is and what a director is. And sometimes the job descriptions can overlap. But it basically boils down to what the person is doing. In a general statement, a director develops, creates, and plans. A manager implements the plans set forth by the director. So when we come out, we're going to ask, which one are you? Sometimes it's an easy answer. Sometimes it's not so easy. As I stated, we do have detailed samples of these job descriptions on our webpage. it is possible to have 2 directors or 2 managers depending on what's happening. Now, USDA created 4 key learning areas that have to be met. And they're in these areas: nutrition, operations, administration, and communications and marketing. Now, many districts at the beginning of the school year have in-service training days for all the staff to attend this specific training on the first day of school or the first day before. Many of those trainings do not fall under these categories, so they would not apply to the Child Nutrition Professional Standards training requirements. Nutrition typically has menu planning, nutrition education, and even general nutrition that they need to know and can be handed down to staff to help with the students to get the nutritious meals that they need to have. Operations, food production, serving food, cashier, point of service, purchasing, procurement, receiving, storage, food safety, and HACCP. And these are all things that we're looking at when we come out to do a review. If you have child nutrition yearly in-service days, these are good things to cover. Administration, free and reduced price meal benefits. Who's responsible for that? Program management, financial management. You guys have certain money that you can spend. Even if you don't actually plan a budget, at the district-wide level, they are putting so much money into the program, and you shouldn't be going over that. So you need to be monitoring your financial situation. Human resources, staff training, facilities, equipment planning. Do you need to buy equipment? Are you soon going to need to buy equipment? And that can also be part of the program management and the financial management. Communications and marketing. Market your program. You need to let people know the wonderful job you're doing. Advertise the things you do, the specials you do. If you're doing a different item on a different day, you're doing a special event, advertise it. Let everyone know the great things you're doing to benefit the students in your district. Helpful hints, workshops and meetings. One of the great things about this is, say your district has a meeting once a month with all the staff. You keep notes of that meeting, a short agenda of what was talked about, how long that meeting lasted, and everyone signs that sheet. That's training for everyone, including the person that presented that training. So if your manager or your director has an hour-long meeting every month, everyone will meet their training requirements as long as they attend that, as long as there's an agenda of the topics and a sign-in sheet and the duration and date of that meeting. Webinars, other online trainings. There are various sites online that you can get online trainings from. We're going to talk about those. What does not count? Training not related to the food service operation. So that's what I talked about earlier. Beginning of the school year district-wide in-service days, most of those aren't going to count. Their civil rights training doesn't count for us. Our civil rights training is more specific and details and points out the federal requirements of the school nutrition civil rights requirements. So your district-wide civil rights training at the beginning of the school year doesn't count for us. And that civil rights training is required every single year. Self-directed training without prior approval. You have staff, they go to the web. On Saturday, it's a rainy day. They look up some stuff. They do some training. They come into you. I did this, 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 and this. It doesn't really count. They have to get prior approval from their manager, from their director. Food and vendor shows don't count. So if you attended the food show in Portland last Thursday, you just had a good time. It doesn't count for professional standards training hours. Now, this is a web page. This is our web page that has more information on it. And let's see if I can get there. Let's see if it's going to work. Bear with us. It's thinking. There we go. All right. So, this is, there we go. This is the Maine Child Nutrition Professional Standards webpage. It has information on districts, the size of the district, and the requirements for having that position. It tells you what we talked about as far as the hours that have to be met yearly. More information on the key training areas. And then you've got some other information down here, U.S. Professional Standards Training Tracking Tool. Don't use it. Maine Child Nutrition Professional Standards Training Tool is an Excel spreadsheet and is very easy to use. We'll talk about the one I said don't use in just a minute. You've got on here the position descriptions I talked about. You click on that and they'll pop up, and you can use that to figure things out as far as what job you actually have. The Institute of Child Nutrition has many training options, webinars. They have things online that you can go in to look at and view trainings that they've already got set up. And the good thing about a company, a webpage like ICN, Institute of Child Nutrition, everything they have on here is going to count toward your professional training hours. So you'll see here, you've got child nutrition resources, and you can see the whole list of things that you can choose to look at and get your training and study on. Very easy to use, very easy to get around on. If you have someone that wants to study Spanish or is studying Spanish, you can even do some of these trainings in Spanish. You may not be able to verify it so well, but they can do it in Spanish if they want to. But they would have to check with you to make sure you're going to let it count. ICN Child Nutrition, they're in PDF, they're in PowerPoints. They've got every possible subject that you need from A to Z to meet your training requirement hours. Okay, the training tracker. How do I keep track of my training? There are various ways to do it. Excuse me. Copies of following documentation is acceptable. So if you went to the School Nutrition Association training last Thursday and Friday, you received an agenda. You signed in, and I'm pretty sure at the end of that, they'll email a certificate of those that signed in. That certificate you get, the agenda you have, is what you're going to want to show us when we come out to do a review. One moment, please. Excuse me. Other types of paper documentation is acceptable as well. Like I said earlier, you have an in-service days, what's the agenda, who was there, who signed in. It lasted for 2 hours. This is what we covered. Those are things that will work. In-house training, as I said, create an agenda, the topics, date it, how long did it last, and the sign-in sheet. So when we come out to do the trainings and we want to see your professional standards training, when we come out to do the review, you will show us this stuff to have to show us. And the next thing I'm going to say, I don't say this to be mean. We need proof. You can't just say, I attended this training on this day. You have to supply proof. That's a USDA requirement. Each SFA must decide how to maintain records that document the training completed. The school nutrition program director, if you have a director or the manager, is ultimately responsible for demonstrating during the administrative review that the SFA is in compliance with these standards. We want to know that you've met the training hours. This part of the year, we're coming out to do a review. We're going to ask for this year. In September, we're doing a review in October. We may ask for last year because you may not have had very much this year so far. Documentation is required, not just the tracking tool. So there's two different tracking tools you can use. We'll talk about both of those in just a minute. But we said, as I said earlier, we need a certificate that proves you were there. We need the sign-in sheets for your in-service days. If you're doing something online, print off the first screen, and then whoever's watching that, date it, sign it, and how long did you do. Self-directed, as I stated earlier, must be approved by the director, the manager. Staff cannot just go out and do it and come to see you on Monday. This is what I did this weekend. It has to be pre-approved by the director, by the manager. All right, USDA Professional Standards Training Tracker. It's not the one that we're really going to recommend the most. It is part of the overall tool that USDA has created that you can do lots of things with. You can do the professional standards training, and this is the first web page. You would have to use this training tool, you have to get what's called an e-authentication user account. So you'd have to follow the links on here, follow the information on here to get that and create an account to track your staff training hours. The other option for that is a spreadsheet that was developed by one of our previous folks, Andy. It's in Excel, and it's really a whole lot easier to do. If I can get this to work real quick here, if it doesn't take too long. I've been in schools, and there are many school districts in Maine that are using this tracking tool. Now, as you can see, the first page has instructions, and then you cross the top, bottom, employee 1, 2, 3. And if you're very familiar with Excel, you can even change each of these tabs for the individual person's name. So employee 1, well, that's going to be me. David H. There we go. So up here, we would put in the district, Maine DOE. Then we've got a drop down here for the school year. And as you can see, this was set up to carry us through 2030. So we got a little bit of ways we can use this tool. We're in school year 2019. Oh, come on, you can do this. There we go. Just for this, we're going to say, I mean, it's me, so it's not going to be a manager, director. We're going to say other staff, if it will let me. You're trying to change is protected. Yeah, I know it is, but anyway. Let me try this one. I might have to look at this. You can do the school name, first name, David Hartley. And then over here, you can put in the date, today's date. Training was provided by Maine DOE, 0.5 hours, and key area was admin. Well, actually, let's do the drop down. Let's see if they'll let me do that. Administration. So then at the very end of this, it's a little ways over, is a district summary. So there's David Hartley. It doesn't have earned hours. Let's see what's going on over here. Anyway, this normally works very good, and it just might be because of where I'm at and what I'm doing. But this is a good tool to use. It's very useful. I know districts that are using it. And when it lets you fill in the position, it takes that information. Now you'll see on here it says required annual hours and hours remaining. It will fill that in. So whatever position you put in, it tells people, you can see how many hours they need. Have they met their hours? Or are they exceeding their hours? It's a very easy tool to use. It's the one we recommend, and it's the one most of us in here are using, or a lot of school districts are using. We've seen it. All right. Current directors. A current director who moves to a different district within the same size bracket does not have to meet the meet the hiring criteria because you're already there. However, if you're moving to a higher bracket, the new requirements must be met. So if you go from a district you're in to one of those 13 that are in the bigger bracket, you would have to meet the new training hour requirements. Online help, there's various places you can go. USDA has a web page where you can get training hours. You can get agendas, topics, things to help you meet your professional standard hours training. You scroll down here, you've got all these options, training objectives, training topics. It tells about the final rules. So there's lots of good information out here as well. You've also got this one, Professional Standards website. This has other information about it. This one has, you can see over to the left here, the training subtopics, nutrition, operations, administration. Click on those, you'll get a whole list of options of what you can do to meet these training hours. All right. Questions answered here, even the silly ones. So let's see. Has anyone asked a question while I've been talking? Questions. Ask your questions now. Which one, this one? Well, so far it doesn't look like we have any questions. Later on, after we're done here, if you have a question, don't hesitate to give us a call. Any of us in here can answer questions about what we just talked about this subject matter. We're all very proficient on it and can help you get to the answers you need. We'll give it another minute or so, see if we do get any questions. If we don't get any questions, we'll go ahead and end this. People that have stayed and been in attendance for the last 30 minutes will be getting a email from people from this office about their attendance to this training. And it looks like we've gone past. So I think if it's okay with everyone, excuse me, I will go ahead and end this training for the day. I thank you for your attendance, and I hope that this was beneficial to you and you've learned something and it will help you to meet the professional standards training hours. Jess, you're welcome. Darlene, you're welcome. All right, folks, have a good day. And thank you for your time.